I was really worried about you and Jamie. It took him 2 hours to connect. Yeah, it was bad.
Surprisingly, the bugs have actually been coming out. Typical winter frost never really happens.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Town Hall. We're going to get things underway here. It is 7:01 p.m. Today is Thursday, March 2nd, and we're here for a special meeting to consider the school facilities project. But first order of business is a pledge to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next on the agenda is a land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next, we have the roll call.
Council President McEntee,
Here.
Council Vice President Marin,
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner. Here. Councilwoman Alley. Here. Councilwoman Rose. Here. All members are present.
Thank you. It's going to move us to item 3, discuss financial and funding strategies with respect to a school facilities project. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to the town manager, Jim Maney, to help kick things off.
Thank you, Council President. Before we get into the agenda, I'd just like to introduce the gentleman on the other side of me right here from the right. It's Luke Murray, Director of Administrative Services for the town, as well as the Chair of the School Building Committee. Phil Conte represents Studio Jade. You have Brian Sylvia, who's our Finance Director. And on the end is Steve Massaroni, who is our financial advisor, and can answer any questions you might have on the issuance of the bonds and the impact on the town. So, Mr. President, the item 3 on the agenda is going to be to discuss the financial and funding strategies with respect to the school facilities project. 4 will be discuss the financial impacts of the school facilities project to include property taxes and the town's bond rating. 5, discuss and act upon a potential school facilities project and bond referendum to include the bond amount, stipulations, referendum date. And then finally, 6, we will have comments from interested citizens this evening. I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Sorry. All right, we're going to begin with a sort of a presentation, if we could, from you, Brian Sylvia, with respect to the financial impacts here related to the different options here.
Can you please change the screen so that the audience can see the best they can, please? I think we're fine. We have it on paper. No? Well, we have this on paper copy.
I'm going to actually start with the recent bond amortization we received today from Steve Massaroni. This is at 4.25%, and he has an updated version as well, but I'm going to let Steve walk you through this one, and then I have some other slides as well.
Just make sure that you speak straight onto the mic. Everyone. Thank you.
Good evening, Council President, members of the Council. My name is Steve Massaroni from PFM Financial Advisors. We're financial advisors, Jim said, to the town. We've been working with the town for probably 20 years or so. So we've been running several scenarios for the town over the past several months. What's on the screen I know is really difficult to read, but what we did is we assumed a $150 million project, and during construction, we assumed a series of bond anticipation notes to fund that. We further assumed $126 million was eligible for reimbursement, $23 million was not eligible, the base rate of 35%, and then the bonus points of 17.5. Under the state program, there is a PAYGO component based on $150 million. The PAYGO component would be $9,415,000. This is just a sample schedule. Doesn't take into consideration construction draw. Just want to show you what a plan of finance would look like. And at the end of the day, the big picture is once the bonds are in place, what the cost of those bonds would be. So in May of '25, we assumed one note of $40 million. Bond anticipation notes are 12-month instruments. They don't go out full term at the end of the 12 months. You roll them for another 12 months, and you add the funds that you need to move on with the project. We assumed final completion of the project in 5/15 of 2028, eligible for reimbursement in 29. I think the big takeaways, if you look at the far right column, it's gradual increase of debt service, which means gradual increase of taxes over the first 3 years during construction. Upon completion, looking at the schedule that has 4.25%, the estimated cost of the project is $6.4 million. That's after state aid. The assumption of 425 has about 50 basis points of cushion. Current rates today would be about a 375. But if you look at historical tax-exempt averages, they do come out to about 4%. So it's on with historical averages. I know everybody probably has been following interest rates. Short-term rates are extremely high right now, but long-term rates are not that bad. We were at 2% a year and a half ago. I don't know that we're going to see 2% anytime soon, but these are more closer to a historical average interest rate. We also ran it at the current rate of 375. And again, if you look at the far right corner, far right column, the cost is approximately $6.1 million. And again, we assume that only $126 million of this would be eligible for reimbursement. If a bigger portion of the project becomes eligible for reimbursement, that number could come down. So that's a general overview. These discussions are interesting. I've been at several of these meetings with communities across the state. I work with about 20 Rhode Island communities, and I'd say about 10 of those communities are either in construction with school projects, planning school projects. We issued $85 million in bonds for Johnston back in September, working with North Providence on $125 million, Cranston $144 million. These are big numbers these communities are working with. They're all struggling with the questions that you have, the impact on bond rating, the impact on interest rates. But if you look at big picture, these are a lot of assumptions in here. At the end of the day, the cost for a project of this amount is going to be in that, maybe 5.8 to 6.4 million range. That's the bandwidth. Could be a little higher than the 6.1, could be a little lower. There's a lot of time that'll pass before you actually go to bond. But again, if we look at the historical averages, 4% is a pretty good number for a historical average. So happy to answer questions on the cash flows.
Any questions for the financial advisor right now?
So the last thing that you just said was the interest rate, the bond debt service will range between 5.8 and 6.4 million each year?
So, correct. So, it's a level debt service structure. So once you issue the bonds, it's like your mortgage with level payments for the 30 years of your mortgage. Here would be level payments for the 20 years. This is a 20-year amortization of your bonds. And when I said that, what I meant is, depending on the rate, whether it's 350, 3.25, 450, that change to the net debt service may be anywhere from high 5 million to mid 6 million. One thing you have to understand is, as rates go up, the state, we're all taxpayers, including me, the state is putting 52%. So any rise in interest rates, you're only picking up 50% of that rise in interest rates. Conversely, any lower interest rates, you're only benefiting 50% of those rates.
I understand.
So there hasn't been a wide swing in rate. Well, interest rates have had wide swings, and it's very volatile, believe me, but, you know, for planning purposes, these are pretty good estimates, given the fact that, again, you're getting 50% state aid.
So I got a question for you with respect to bond rating. So taking on a $150 million bond, for example, what would the result or impact be on our bond rating? And if that is a negative impact, how does that affect our borrowing capability in the future?
Yep, good question. So we had done back in November some sensitivity and pro forma analysis for the town. And honestly, the break even, so let me back up a second. The rating agencies use a scorecard methodology. Back in 2008 with the financial crisis, I think the rating agencies were a little bit asleep at the wheel, so since that time there's been more transparency with ratings. So it's a scorecard methodology. Moody's just changed their methodology back in November. The good news is, with that change in the methodology, the town maintained their AA1 rating, where some communities didn't across the country. There were a number of downgrades as a result of the methodology change. So back in November, we did some sensitivity, and we ran it, what's the most you could run, or the most capacity to maintain the AA1 rating. It was $65 million. We also ran 100 million, 125, and 140. With the 100 through 140 million, the rating did go down in the scorecard from a AA1 to a AA2. Now, that's the quantitative portion of the rating. There's a qualitative portion to the rating as well. And there are below-the-line adjustments. One of the below-the-line adjustments is the fact that you're going to get 50% state aid on your project. So the rating agencies will take that into consideration. But the score does score out at a AA2. I've worked with several communities, Johnson, as I just mentioned, who were able to maintain their ratings even though their debt load was above average, just because of other factors, whether it's stable tax base, consistent financial performance, things of that nature. Johnston has some very good economic development that's coming into the town that helped them. Barrington's another one. A few years back, we did a fairly sizable transaction for them, able to maintain their rating. Cranston's maintained the rating with 144 million. They haven't issued it all, but the rating agencies are aware of these changes. So while the scorecard does come out at AA2, just based on my history and what I know about the rating agencies, given the great tax base of South Kingstown, the steady management, the rock-solid finances, I would be surprised if they did move the rating down for the elevated debt. The debt certainly will be elevated, but I would be surprised if they did move it down. No guarantees they could do it. So to the second part of your question, what does that mean? AA2 is a great rating. Your neighbors to the north are AA2, Narragansett's a AA2. The median rating for cities and towns across the country is a AA3. So you're 2 notches above that. Your second highest rating of any city or town in the country. AAA is the only higher rating. AA2 is still a very, very good rating, but it will impact the interest rate. Not much, maybe 5-10 basis points. And again, I would argue that the state's picking up half of that increase in the rate, but there would be an impact. There would be a greater impact if you were a AA3, for example, and you moved down to a single A. That's significant. So there you would see, for a community where their rating went from a AA3 to a single A, there's some movement in interest rates. But from a AA2 to or 1 to a AA2, financially the impact is not great.
Thank you.
You're
Any other questions up here?
Yeah, so even if we did issue a bond for, say, 150 or 140,000, if we were able to defray some of those estimates, like, say, with the sale of one of the school properties, we don't have to issue all the bonds if we pass them. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. The way the authorization will read, if approved, would be the town will issue not to exceed of $50 million in bonds and/or notes. The town, if this goes to the voters and they approve it, it does have to come back to the town council to actually issue the debt. So you certainly do not have to issue up to the 150, all of the 150. You can issue any amount of the authorization, and you don't lose that authorization. The it stays, unless you extinguish it at some point, it stays available.
So it does allow us to keep a good eye on the, things as we're going along then.
Yeah, and with this strategy of issuing notes during construction, you're not issuing 150 million out of the box and then, constructing the school. The reason you don't generally do that is because if you think about a 4% interest rate on 150 million, it's not affordable without the state offset. So the reason you issue bond anticipation notes during construction is so that when you issue your bonds, you're substantially complete and the debt service principal syncs up with the state aid. So my point is that, yes, during that 3-year period, I have to answer the question now, during that 3-year period, things could happen. And if you did sell a piece of property for $2 million, when you pay off the notes and issue the bonds, instead of issuing the 150 in bonds, you issue 148 because you have the $2 million coming from another source. You do have that ability.
Can I also just ask you for a simple definition of basis points?
Yeah, so a basis point is .001.
Okay. And so you said it would make a difference of 5 to 10 basis points in our rating, or what was that? Or is that
Interest
regarding
rate.
the interest rate?
Yeah, regarding the interest rate, so, the higher your rating, the lower the interest cost, the lower the rating.
Credit score.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly.
And the bond is like a home equity loan, kind of.
It's like a mortgage. Yeah, I mean, the payments come, you have annual, well, in a bond, it's actually twice a year you pay debt service as opposed to a mortgage where you're paying, every month.
Any other questions up here? All right, Ryan, now we're going to move to, let's look at the tax impacts, all the options here.
This is a little small, I apologize. This was kind of a last-minute thing, putting this together, and so, apologies. Try and make it a little bigger. So this is going to provide a breakdown of, at the top you'll see, the top left-hand corner is a summary of the town's current debt reserve. Right now we have, in the 2022 audit, we have 2.6 million. 150,000 is being used in the current year. Proposed in the budget for FY24 that just went out is the use of 150,000 again. We're anticipating not using any in 25, so we'll have, at the time of when we start to issue the bands, we'll have available 2.3 million available to help to offset the future costs. So that's going to now move over to now in the next cell in fiscal year 25. You're going to see our current debt service. So that is our current debt service for the town before we issue any new bonds. That's $1,720,000. That is our general obligation bonds and the guild fund. The guild fund is offset by the revenue of the guild, but they're included in the GO bonds. It does not include anything from that are enterprise funds. So that is our current debt service for FY25. The bands that year will be at a cost estimated at $1.4 million. So our total debt service for the year would be $3.1 million. Again, we have 1.7 available. I'm anticipating using $370,000 from our reserve. So we'll need to raise $1,050,000 that year for additional debt service. That would be a result of 15 cents on the tax rate or a levy increase of 1.35%. Sliding over to FY26, similar scenario where we'll have debt service of $1,642,000. The bands are anticipated at $2.7 million, so our total debt need that year will be $4.3 million. I'm sorry, I should have said 2 for the people with handouts. I'm on page 3 because that's on the $150 million that we were just speaking about. I should have started with that. I apologize. I started on page 3 because we started on the $150 million with Steve. Sorry about that. Yes, sorry. Okay, is that better? Okay. So in FY26, as I mentioned, the need will be 4.3 million. We'll be carrying the 2.7 from the prior year, FY25, which was the 1.7 and what we raised of 1,050,000. So we'll have a need, we'll be using 588,000 from our reserve that year. We'll have a need to raise an additional $1 million for the debt need that year, which will result in a rate increase of 14 cents and a levy increase of 1.26. In FY '27, this is a year where we'll have our actual debt service go down a bit, so from 1.64 to 1,000,003. So our actual current debt service is going down, which helps. Then the bands will be 3.5, so our total debt that year will be 4.8. From our prior year, we'll have 3.7 on the books, so we'll need to raise 1.1 million. That'll be a rate increase of 16 cents and a levy increase of 1.37. In FY '28, this is actually the first year where the bond is issued, so this is really would be a big hit. We have debt, though, of current debt of 1.2 million. The first year of the bond would be 6.4 million, so our total debt service would be 7.6 million. We'll be carrying 4.8 from the prior year, so we'll be using almost 1.4 million from our reserve. So we'll need to raise 1.3 million. That would be a 19-cent increase, 1.66 on the levy. And finally, in FY '29, we would be fully rolled out at this point. Our current debt service would be 1.1 million. The second year on the bond would again be 6.4 million, so the total debt would be 7.5. We'll have funds from the prior year in debt service of 6.2, so we'll need to raise 1.33. That would be 19 cents on the rate and a 1.59 levy increase. Over the 5 years, that equates to an estimated 83 cents and a 7.23 levy increase. I should stop there just for a second, and I know when we've talked about this in the past, I've hesitated just focusing on the bond, because I don't want to say these years we're going to have these rates, and then obviously the town is going to have growth. These are not going to be our rates, because we will have additional rate increases beyond the bond. This reflects just the impact of the bond, nothing else. So there will be other increases eventually, but this is just associated what we'll need to raise money to fund the bond.
Just one quick question to clarify. For FY '28, did you say 19 cents or 17? Because we have 17 on our paperwork. Which one?
I am on the page, I'm on the
Okay, got
150
it.
million
Yep.
at 4.25%.
Okay, thanks.
So Brian,
Yes,
right now, the tax rate is $10.95.
correct.
Correct. So I was just gonna do the 84 more cents onto that.
I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
but I'm estimating, because we have a proposed rate next year of 1107, so it'd be the 84 cents, 83 cents on top of the 1107 that we're estimating for FY '24.
1107. So. 1190. What is that as a percentage increase? I can do the math, but I didn't know if you had it.
I hadn't done that yet.
I love fractions.
That, over the 5 years would be a 7.5, a 7.6% increase.
For the school, just for the school bonds alone. Okay.
So Brian, I do want to ask you to sort of put some of these numbers into context for us, maybe like increase in total tax payment annually with respect to the median assessed home value. Can you do that for us?
Yeah. So it seems like most years, again, just going over it, you got 15, 14, 16, 19, and 19. So I'll start with an early year. So
Even just the increase from year 0 as compared to year 5, so we can still see what the buildup is for the different options here?
So in, I thought I had the first year, apologies, that was. So for year 1, the 15 cents, that would be a $63.63 increase. And that again is based on the current average assessed value, or median assessed value of 424,200. The next year, FY '26, where we had a projected rate increase of 14 cents, that would be $59.39. And FY '27, which I think 27 and, nope, 27 and 16.
And Brian, which one are you quantifying the numbers on? The 150 at the
the-
4.25?
This is the 4.25, yes. So the 16 cent increase proposed and projected in FY '27 would be $67.87.
That's the 150 million at 4.25, the last page, to clarify.
And the last 2 years are both 19 cents listed as. They would be $80.60 each.
What's that total amount? Is that 435?
$351.46.
Can you repeat that?
$351.46.
Brian, can you just run that for the 150 at the 3.75 interest rate, and then again as well for the 125 at the 4.25? We just want to see the differences.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch.
Can you run the same
Yes,
thing we're looking for here on the 150 at the 3.75 interest rate, and then also the 125 at the 4.25 interest rate?
so the 150 million at 3.75, the total would be $339.34. the 125 million at 4.25% would be $233.31.
All right, thank you, Brian. Just to clarify, so we're all clear on what this means here. So at the project of $150 million with a 4.25% interest rate, we expect an increase of $351 in total property taxes on a median assessed house over a 5-year period.
That's correct.
And then with respect to $150 million at 3.75% interest rate, that number would be $339.
Correct.
Finally, at a project of $125 million at an interest rate of 4.25%, that number is $233.
Correct.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify all that. All right. Anyone here have any questions for Brian right now?
I just want to clarify, just for the sake of everybody listening. So the first 125, that's for the high school, and that is reimbursable. The first 101,000 or million of that is reimbursable at 52, up to 52.5%. Is that correct?
That's the current assumption we are running, yes.
Okay, and so the second 25 million that we're talking about, which would be for the other schools, that is also reimbursable at a rate of 52.5%? Okay. And so I was just looking at this form, which it sounds like it's a little bit different, but I mean, it is definitely a little bit different. I was trying to see what the difference would be between the 150 and the 125, and so I just simply added these together like an a la carte menu. And what I had come up with for the 150 was 300, let's see, basically, between the two, it came out to be a difference of like $59 a year divided by 12, so a little bit less than $5 a month between those two, between the 150 and the 125. I realize that that might not be exact, but I'm just trying to get like a basic handle on it. It sounded like it might have been, what the calculations that he just did for you, was that at 3.75, that last one, or was that, oh, that was,
It's 125 at 4.2.
Okay.
This is total over 5 years.
oh, okay. All right, so I'm not really, I was just trying to,
To shed a little light on that, so the numbers earlier that Brian ran, because obviously we're trying to be as conservative as possible, right? So they accounted for town growth. This tonight is being presented as bond only, to be as transparent as possible, of saying, we don't know what the growth is going to be. So he had a growth factor for the town. So we previously said factors of 9% on the property rate. That was with growth anticipated. We don't know how the town's going to grow, so to clarify, tonight, he's run them just as the bond only. So it will vary a little bit, but the overall proportions, you're right, are somewhat equivalent between the tiers.
okay, thank you.
Now, Brian, one more calculation here I want to ask you to run here. That increase on 351 over the 5-year period for the 150 at the 4.25% interest rate, what is that percentage increase year 5 as compared to year 0?
That is a 7.6% increase.
All right. I want to ask you the same question, run the same calculation for the increase in $339 year 5 as compared to year 0 at the 150 at 3.75% interest rate.
That would be a 7.3% increase.
All right, lastly, last one. The $233 increase over the 5 years is at year 5 compared to year 0, $125 million at 4.25% interest rate.
5.0% increase.
All right, now I just want to clarify that from year 0 to year 5, for the project of $150 million at 4.25% interest rate, there will be a 7.6% increase in the tax bill anticipated for a median assessed value house, $424,000. Yes?
Yes.
And that same would be a 7.3% increase over the 5 years at a $150 million project at 3.75% interest rate. And finally, that would be a 5% increase over the 5 years for a project of $125 million at 4.25% interest rate.
Correct.
All right, thank you. All right. Yep, go ahead, Mike.
I have a slightly different version of that. The calculations that you gave us on paper included $125 million at 4.25% interest rate. And over 5 years, that comes out to $232.45. Did I get that figure right?
I'm sorry?
Did I get the figure right?
I had 233.31.
Okay, 233.
I'll give you the dollar.
And that's at the 4.25%. We don't have a calculation here for the 3.75 as the financial advisor did. Is there a quick way to come up with the difference? I mean, I know everybody in the room knows that it's lower. I'm wondering if you can figure out how much lower.
Yeah, right. I wouldn't feel comfortable giving a guess right now, I don't think.
Okay, I'm not looking for a guess. Okay.
All right, any other questions for Brian right now? All right, thank you, Brian. We're going to turn to you, Phil Conti of Jade Studio. Whatever you have to present for us tonight.
I'll put this on this side. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting me here this evening. I have some information in front of me, but I really want to narrate what I think would be a good update for you and for your future questioning back. You know, building a new high school is nothing that should be taken lightly for a community. It's your flagship facility. It is a very large investment. And this is your third attempt at doing a large project like this. I can say in the time that I have been working with you, I am very comfortable in saying that you have been approaching this very methodically. You have had a lot of good discussion and engagement amongst yourself. You have come to some conclusions that have solidified the project, such as the location and the scope of the project in general, and you should be very proud of all of that work. That's not easy. All the while trying to keep your community united in this big project, this big investment. We have done a number of things working with you. We've had educational planners working with the school department to understand how big a facility they think they need for the current programs that they have. We have experience from other projects on how big a building should be to service these needs. We've looked at your available property and where we're looking to put the building on Columbia Avenue, and you've made wise decisions in avoiding swing space, and we have a path to probably build on that site and then swap, all very prudent decisions. And we've come to some recommendations. Additionally, we're also looking at what RIDE's guidelines are and how they approach a new building. And the way they approach it is formula-based. Starts with enrollment, then it leads to the square footage of the building, and then it comes to the funding that they're willing to reimburse the municipality for. And it's a balance between that, because the funding mechanism or the funding amount, the dollars per square foot that RIDE is currently using, they recently increased it in December, is still falling short of where the current marketplace is. And it is creating a burden on many communities, right? If they're just looking to use what RIDE reimburses, it is not enough. Our recommendation to date is based on what we think the current construction costs are and giving you a building that programmatically may be right now at about 157,000 square feet, knowing that we could probably bring to you a building that is more like 140,000 square feet, still working with the district to maintain the integrity of their programs, but applying a more prudent cost per square foot. Right now, RIDE is $589 a square foot. We're projecting $789 a square foot, given the current marketplace that we are in. You have neighbors that are constructing new high schools that are struggling with the dollar amounts that they put forth in their Stage 2 application. Newport is an example. Newport was approved for $98 million for a 755-student high school. That project was to include the demolition of the high school and their career and tech building. But as of very recently, they have decided that they're going to have to keep their existing career and tech building because they do not have the funds to support the project. Similarly, in Newport, their memorandum of agreement when they submitted the Stage 2 was for an addition to Pell Elementary at 15,000 square feet for $7.5 million. We actually completed that Pell project, but we were unable to reach the 15,000 square foot. That building was about 12,000 square feet to fit within the budget. So I would advise you to carefully arrive at the value to build what you want to build, recognizing that we can certainly fine-tune square footage and some construction costs. But right now, to recognize that there is a gap would be very prudent for the council to consider. We would recommend a new high school building of approximately 140,000 square feet that would come in about $119 million, allow $6 million for athletic and physical education work and the demolition of Curtis Corner at about $6 million. That brings you to $125 million for the high school project and associated field work. Keeping in mind you do have other buildings in the district and other needs. And based on that deferred maintenance assessment that we've done, it would be prudent to have about $25 million for that work as well. So the $125 for the high school, $25 for deferred maintenance for the rest of the district and other programmatic enhancements to other buildings in the district, that's how you arrive at the $150 million. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but at a very high level, that is our recommendation to date.
Thank you, Phil. Any questions up here for Phil right now?
Just one narrow one to start with, Phil. In your presentation, you mentioned demolition, but I didn't hear demolition of the old high school as part of the 125.
It is, yes.
Phil, I got a question for you here. So in the event that deferred maintenance on the schools outside of the high school are sort of not considered as part of this plan, that would just be something we'd have to pick up down the road at potentially higher costs? What do you anticipate there?
It's important to protect the assets that you have in place, right? Imagine if you were to defer replacing the roof on your house. Eventually, you will have to do it, and it may cost more than what it would cost now. But when it comes to the deferred maintenance, we did not see any major immediate life safety issues. We would bring that to your attention. But we want you to be able to maintain your assets for the next 20 years. So it would be wise to take that deferred maintenance, and you can't ignore it. You will want to methodically address that over the next 5, 10, 15 years, if it is not part of a $125 million campaign, which really is only the high school.
So if we included the 25 million of deferred maintenance for all the other schools, you say that would provide for an increase in the useful life for around 20 years?
Depending on pretending on, it depends on the building.
Yep.
And what we're doing to the building. But our goal is to continue to address deferred maintenance items so that you can maintain your asset for 20 years or more.
So based on your assessment of the existing condition of those schools that we would consider deferred maintenance on, if we didn't do any deferred maintenance now, how long before things, really break down? Before there is an immediate sort of,
I would say you have certainly your facilities group from the district could tell you more, but I would probably say within 5 years, you're going to start needing to address some issues. Our deferred maintenance assessment looked at a 10-year window. We did not identify anything that needed to be done in year one, right? There's no major life safety issues. But certainly priorities 2 and 3, which start to span a 3 to 5 year window, there were those. So I would say if you did nothing now, within 5 years, you will be looking at some significant projects that will need to be completed throughout the district.
got it, thank you.
So if we just look at the basics of keeping our students warm, dry, and safe, for the new high school, minus the cost of the athletic fields, that's 119, and the district-wide deferred maintenance is 20, and the other stuff is programmatic primarily, at least like according to this sheet, which is what I was looking at earlier. So in order to keep our kids warm, safe, and dry from kindergarten to grade 12 is roughly 139 million, whereas the 11 million would be programmatic. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Phil? We have him right now? Luke, go ahead.
Just a point of information, because this was discussed a little late, but in talking to the team today in preparation for this meeting, we've sort of glossed over one issue on the athletic complex, which is that it's a segregated project, right? So we've talked in terms of a gap between the 100 and 101 and the 125, but in reality, in thinking it through, we've said athletic facilities are reimbursable. Demolition of an existing building for a educational element is reimbursable. So while I have to go back to ride on this, I am fairly confident that that actually wouldn't be part of that gap sum. So it's really the 119 versus that 101 number. And we kind of, in our sort of rush to be conservative and try to think through the project, I think we didn't realize, we're thinking of it as a typical campus, but because it's an off-site facility, and it's really segregated as a project, I feel confident that would be reimbursable separate, if that helps. It certainly doesn't hurt the project.
Thank you, Luke. All right, any other questions up here? Do you want to discuss it all before we open it up? All right,
I'd like to hear from the community.
yeah,
We've
we'll
spent
open
a
it
lot
up.
of time.
We'll open it up. All right, at this point, we're going to turn to comments from interested citizens. Now, there are a lot of people here, and this is obviously an topic of interest. So we're going to limit you to 3 minutes. We're going to ask that you first just identify yourself, and first come, first serve. Come on up.
Jim O'Neill, Matunic. Just a couple of questions so I can try to catch up with all this. Really would have loved to have some paper copies of all those displays this evening. Very hard to keep up otherwise. So first of all, my question is, I guess I'm directing it to the folks who are our consultants and finance people. Is South Kingstown the issuer of these bonds, or Rhode Island Health Education Building Authority? Who's going to issue the bonds?
In order to get reimbursed on principal and interest, they have to be issued through Rhode Island Health and Ed. But
Can you speak up, please?
In order to get reimbursed for principal and interest on the bonds, under state statute, they have to be issued through Rhode Island Health and Ed. But it's based on the credit of the municipality. Rybeck is simply a conduit to get into the market.
Okay, I understand that. So nothing is going on our books, not the 140 million, not the 127 million, our share for the town. It's not going on our books. It's not affecting South Kingstown's future costs.
It is going on your balance sheet. Yeah,
It is going on our
debt
balance.
on the town's balance sheet. It's just not issued as a traditional general obligation bond. It's issued through Rybeck as the conduit.
Okay,
Still on your balance
okay.
sheet, though.
All right, so we'll have to go through future scrutinies. Has anyone else in our balance sheets looked at? Okay, we talked about the market. Can these bonds be callable, let's say in 5 years? What would be the cost, an eighth or a quarter per year? Or what might be the cost? I don't want to get into refunding and sinking funds, but we've got good enough credit, do we not, for possible a 5-year call?
5 years pushing it. In the market, the standard, as you probably know, is a 10-year par call. Years ago, it started at 103, went down to 102 and 100%. We've done 8-year par calls with no penalty. That's in a good market. If you're selling bonds in a tough market, you may pay up considerably for an 8-year call. Haven't done 5 years. In other parts of the country, they get away with 5-year calls. Rhode Island's not a specialty state, which means we don't have a lot of money market funds that buy tax-exempt paper. We only have one, the Narragansett Fund. So we don't have the flexibility that some other states do have.
Right, but are we able to do it, or Rhode Island Health and Ed says no?
No, you dictate, the town dictates the terms of how they want to issue the debt, whether it's 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, what type of call provision they would like on it. That's all dictated by the town. Or
And also, like Councilwoman Alley said, it can be series. We can try to figure out how we want to do this with your help, obviously.
Correct. You can issue the bonds, the legislation will say in one or more series of bonds with a not-to-exceed number.
Okay. What I don't understand is, you brought up Johnston and Cranston. Can I ask you, are they at 52.5%, or are they quite a bit higher, which I think they are than
Johnson
South
actually
King?
was comparable. If I recall, it was about 54, 55. I have a lot of school bonds in my head, to be honest with you. And Cranston's base rate is 54, and they may be eligible for 20, so they could be up to 74% reimbursement.
Okay, because I keep looking at the original 20-year amortization here for the $140 million bond here. It's showing the state at 43%. And I know that's, it's not the 105 million, it's 125 million, but there's just something wrong with our share of all this. And then finally, how do we get up to $789 a square foot versus $589? I understand prevailing age, wages, et cetera, but what is just pushing these numbers beyond? I'm in the real estate business. I certainly know what remodeling is, but that's an excessive cost versus building new. So why is this just jumping out at these numbers now?
So a lot of it is really come down to lack of a labor force and the contractors being able to charge a premium for work. We've issued a number of projects recently where we have received no bids from contractors on school projects that are well into the millions, or that we've received only one. So all of construction is coming at a premium right now, whether it is for some select material, where the lead time may take almost over a year, to just a lack of a labor force. So Dodge Report did issue a statement last month or so that said that non-residential construction starts have declined. Maybe the construction costs will start to plateau, but I do not see them declining. So these numbers are coming from estimators on a variety of projects that we're working on in Rhode Island in the public sector.
Okay, and just,
So Jim, I do want to politely ask you to wrap up. You're kind of well over. So if you could just conclude, we do have a lot of other people here.
can we get copies of these tonight? Because I hate leaving here with
Sure,
so many
that's fine.
questions left
Susan, can you
unanswered.
print out copies of this?
off with your answer there. Are we allowed to choose the construction firms, or is the state going to tell us, or is it going to be the dollar amount, which will be obviously maybe quite evident?
So this will all be bid publicly and depending upon the method for delivery that the school department decides, but there is usually a competitive dollar amount component to selection.
Thank you, Jim. All right, anyone else in the audience? Just feel free, come on up. Come on, there's so many people. Feel free. Don't be nervous, it's fun up there.
My name is Catherine Canavan. I don't live in South Kingstown, I live in Narragansett, but I ran for a state seat last term, and I run for District 34, which is half South Kingstown, half Narragansett. I plan on running again in 2024. While I was out last year, going to 2,000 houses, there were a lot of people that I spoke with about this new school. First of all, the town has already said they didn't want to do 85 million. And now we're up to 150 million. I don't understand. I thought that was all set. This time, you're talking about all this money, the price of everything that's right now. The elderly that live in this community cannot afford another increase in their taxes. They don't know where they're coming up with what they have now. Never mind this, over the next 5 years. Where are they supposed to go if they don't have family or anything like that? That's their big concern. Not to mention families. With the prices of everything now, and now their taxes are going to go up. They go up normally. You know, when is the next reassessment for the town? You know, you've got the taxes that are going to go up for this bond, and then it's over 5 years or whatever. You're going to have tax assessments, so the other taxes are going to go up too. So it's not just 7.6%. You're going to add more to that. And you were talking about the monies and everything, and you mentioned, well, we don't know what kind of growth we're going to have. You're not. You're losing people. Why are we here? You're saying you don't have the students for the school that you have. I also read that you want more space because you have no storage. You have no room for anything. Well, redo the building. You've got plenty of room. You could take one whole wing and turn it into offices, storage space. You could enlarge your gym if you wanted to bring other people in to have your athletic things. I spoke to people out on the road, and they said, you know, what do you think? And I said, well, first of all, if I bought a house in the 50s or 60s, I hit the lottery. That was the best time to buy a house, the best construction going. Those are the ones that are out there that you don't have to touch. You could move in, turnkey. These schools were built back then. Now, I said to the people I was talking with, I said, now, if you bought a house, are you not going to touch it for 50 or 60 years? Why are we looking at we have to get rid of this school and build a whole new one? Because I'm afraid that you're going to build another one and you're not going to touch it again. And 25 years from now or 50 years from now, you're going to say, we need another new building. Why wasn't it upkept? I say right now, with everything, the cost of everything, people can't afford this. Do a smaller bond, upgrade your school, make it last another 5 or 10 years. You're talking about, oh, we want competition. Competition for what? People are leaving. They can't afford to live here. And whether you build a new school or you don't, they can't live here. They can't afford to live here. So for now, make a 5-year plan, make a 10-year plan. Fix the school up, have your extra space. And as far as, tournaments and things like that, we've got fields. Your other schools are going to have to be bused here, so bus our kids there. Go over to, the baseball fields and the tracks and whatever. But make a shorter plan. 5 or 10 years from now, things might be better. Right now, this is the worst possible time to do something big like this. The worst, as far as prices to construct, taxes for people. People are trying to just keep their homes. They're trying to put food on their table. And you want to add this to them. It doesn't make any sense. One thing, so when one of you, I think it was the second gentleman, when you mentioned the final project and you said that would be with a certain square footage, how many students were you looking at?
So there's approximately around 700 students. NESDEC had projected 683. We have come up with numbers of 702, 707. We've also developed a formula to investigate 725, recognizing that some of the students it may increase. The students may stay after 8th grade.
Okay, and what about storage? What about, you know, a nice gymnasium and all of that? You're gonna have enough room for that too? Or
Yes.
just for the students?
Yes.
Okay, because you did talk about other school systems that are having difficulty with the money and doing the things they wanted to do. East Providence High School, they're in problems too. They built it, they can't even put the students that they have right now in there. They're having to cut the classrooms in half and have 2 classrooms in one room. Because financially, right now, it's just not feasible for anybody.
So I don't want to cut you off. but-
Yeah, I'm done. Those were my issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your time. Just my opinion, no disrespect.
Thank you.
Roberta Mulholland. I have a question for Brian and Steve. In 2020, and I want to say it was August, September, Steve was at the meeting and we were talking about the bond amount at that time. And I recall that the top amount that South Kingstown should be looking at borrowing at that time was $85 million. And so that's about 2.5 years ago. And now we're looking at 150. Can you tell me or tell all of us, what changed, what goes into that? I understand there's a revaluation and our tax basis is probably larger, but.
Yeah, so the analysis that was done was what was the capacity to maintain the rating? And the capacity at the time was $65 million to maintain that AA1 rating. As I mentioned earlier tonight, we ran some pro formas at $100 million, $125, and $140. Under those 3 case studies, the rating does go down to a AA2. So moving forward, there's no guarantees that if the town does proceed with a $150 million project, that you'll maintain that rating. So that's why I did talk about the difference in the rate between a AA2 and a AA1, but the capacity at the current rating level is $65 million when you look at the quantitative scorecard that Moody's runs. Now again, there's qualitative factors that I had mentioned earlier that would hopefully enable the town to maintain the AA1, but I'm not here saying that that's a guarantee. The capacity is 65, which is consistent with what back, I guess, in 2020 we talked about.
Okay, so we were staying we were being conservative. We were saying, no, we're not going to do anything at that time. That $85 million came from that so that it would definitely not affect our bond rating. And now we're taking a little bit of risk, a little bit.
No, I mean, the point of doing the pro formas is simply to see where they score out.
Okay.
So I'm not here to tell you, tell the town how big the school should be. I'm just here to tell you the implications potentially on the rating based on certain factors. It's pretty common to run sensitivity and pro formas based on different amounts. So the desire is a larger dollar amount. We run the numbers, and the outcome did come out to the AA2. Profile-wise, the town really hasn't changed much. I mean, since 2020, to be honest. The tax base has grown, which is great. Demographic profile hasn't changed. Town's issued modest debt. So in general, the profile has stayed the same.
Just to add to that, before our last reval, our bonding capacity was approximately 157 million, and we're now at 210 million based on the last reval.
Oh, okay. Well, those are important numbers to give us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience? Feel free to just come on up.
My name is Joe Martin. I'm a carpetbagger, just moved in a year ago to the brand-new South Shore Village. of 180 units of geezers who have no children, not allowed to. And I, off the top of my head, estimate that the place is worth about $100 million in tax rateables. So the place is growing. All in the southwest end of town, I see little subdivisions going off on Little Moraine Road. Yeah, most of them seem to be in Charlestown. I can't tell which is which. But there is growth in this town. I don't really think that the impact of URI as a center for research has reached this town. I don't know what they're doing up there, but every other state university, flagship university, has all kinds of spin-off stuff. All we do is ticket the students, as far as I can see, just an impression. But to sit there and say that where I live is drips the middle class. The average place is these little tiny little bungalows worth about $650,000, which is not that much above what I understand is the average valuation in a town of $400,000. Okay? So it's attractive. This place to live is attractive to the middle class, out of childbearing age, paying real money into the place. And I didn't hear anybody complain about the school taxes and so forth, because everybody's closer to the end of the beginning, so we would like to leave our children something that's worth something. So we all obviously expect the property values to grow where we live. And I'll draw one last contract. So I understand, I've learned enough about the South County culture that this is the north side of Route 1. So when I go over the south side of Route 1 to go to the wildlife refuges, I see all kinds of people blowing $15,000 to put in a cobblestone driveway into their house, which no guy who drives a plow wants to plow. I have to assume that if you're putting in boutique driveways, that the tax assessment on people is going up. I wouldn't know whether they're year-round residents like myself or summer residents, but I simply don't see that this place is not going to grow because I'm 250 pounds of Exhibit A.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Greg Sweet. After the reevaluation, you said that our borrowing limit jumped up to 210, and it's because all the evaluations went up. We're being reevaluated again in 3 years, I think?
More.
2 more. What happens if they go down? Where do we stand? How will that affect things?
So the debt capacity is 3% of the total assessed value of the town.
So if we borrowed the 150, does that put us in a worse position as far as bond ratings go? Because the total value would have come down?
Yeah, the 3% limit is a state statute. So cities and towns, if you issue debt under Rhode Island General Laws 4512, you can issue up to 3% of your net assessed value or your assessed values. Once you issue the debt, it goes against that 3%. So if the value goes down, then you'd have less capacity. Here, there appears to be plenty of capacity with the 200 million number. If you issue 150, you still have capacity for 50 million. There's other ways you can issue debt in Rhode Island as well if you come up close to that cap through special legislation with the General Assembly.
If the 150 is voted on tonight, where does that leave us if we had to borrow more money down the road for other projects like fix the water problem in town?
That's a very good question. So if it's enterprise water or sewer that's issued and supported by use fees, so that wouldn't be impacted. But certainly a project of this size limits what the town can do over the next few years until they start paying that down as far as other priorities, whether it's roads or public buildings. So it does put pressure on the ability to do other things in the town until they start to pay down that 150, as well as pay down some of the existing debt that's on the books, which is going to amortize over the next 5 years as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just to continue on that, so the debt capacity right now, as I mentioned, was 210. We currently have debt on the books of approximately 15 million, but of that 15 million, only about 2 million is subject to that debt limit. So we're about 208 under it right now, under the cap.
Okay, but when the 5 years is up, that'll be paid off? When we're starting to pay the full vote on the bond, school bond?
That amount goes down each year. I'm not sure if it will be paid off entirely in 5 years. I hadn't looked at that yet. It continues to go down each year. I don't know if that will be gone in 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience?
Hi, I'm Libby Nestor. I grew up in Wakefield, went to URI, went off, did this and that, and I moved back to town about 30 years ago. I'm old enough and I've been around long enough to know that it was Carla Davis's mom, Barbara, who wrote the winning song for the town's 250th anniversary. Fun fact. I felt I should have spoken at the council meeting a week ago, but then the gentleman from South Shore Village expressed what I was thinking. Like him, I also feel quite strongly that the heart of a town is in its school, and the high school is the gem of it, as you said, I think. Schools are our hope for a better future, and I say this as someone who is retired, who is without kids, so no grandkids in the system. Still, I've always been happy to support public education with tax dollars. The council, so that means we really, as town people, bear responsibility for the level funding of education here and the deferred maintenance in recent years. And I did not come out for meetings until quite recently, which is something I regret. I certainly didn't come out to speak during the last referendum because I never thought this town would vote down a school referendum. So I just want to say, and I'm here to say, that it's time for us as a town to show that we're hospitable and welcoming to young families with kids so that we can beat the demographic shift in our state and attract them here to South Kingstown. And I think that won't happen without the town council encouraging voters in the town to strongly support the plan, which I hope you will vote on tonight. We won't attract and keep young families, I think, unless we convince them that we value their kids enough to reach into our pockets and pay because they're worth it. I think it's only going to get more expensive to build the longer we wait. And if we wait much longer, we may not have the kids to worry about, so we'll have that virtual school that the lady talked about last week. The high school, as it happens, is almost as old as I am. It's just 2 years younger than I am, and I retired 2 years ago. So I think it may be time for South Kingstown to retire their school building. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for those people who have spoken. I know it's not easy to do so. I have trouble with it also, and I like to talk a lot. I moved here in 1976 and from San Francisco. So I did quite a change.
Oh, sir, could you just state your name for the record?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Mark Levitt. And I moved to San Francisco, from San Francisco to Rhode Island, and I loved it as soon as I moved here. There was something about the landscape, something about the people, something about the quality of life, something also about the pride that people who lived here had about the place, the sense of place that they collectively created. And a large part of that was the high school. And I was not a student that was a shining star of wherever I went to school. But I did understand, as I walked past the school, that I felt better about myself seeing that school and looking at the kids go into that school and watching the way in which they enacted and acted within that school as people going to be adults in the next generation who was going to build the society that we had. A high school is the shining light of a collective culture. To the extent to which we begin to become penny wise and pound foolish, we sacrifice the aspects of the collective of our town. We sacrifice what it means to be part of a community. We sacrifice what it means to be thinking as individuals, worrying, which is certainly reasonable, and I accept that. But we might want to worry even more so about the disintegration of a way of life that I understood as something that was hopefully never irreparable. In this kind of anxiety, partially, I think, and we must understand this, partially, not completely, but partially composed by our anxiety-provoking COVID. We are living and making decisions within a world that was insecure. It's a time where we have to now grab hold of ourselves, recognize that we're responsible for not only the future of the young people all around, wanting to understand, wanting to feel that they are part of a community that they're engaged in, that they are taken care of by us, the elders, and not filled with the anxieties of these last few years. We are all responsible for each other. Without working together, we have fragmentation. With a beacon of education that's staring at us all the time when we drive in and out, it says, we are making something great. I'm not saying it's without the anxiety of finances. I'm not going to have that kind of, I'm not a wealthy person. And I certainly understand people who are older than me who are worrying about fixed incomes.
Mark, I don't mean to interrupt you. You are a little over. I just want to politely ask you to sort of conclude.
I'm finished. Yeah, I'm going to finish. But I want to get to remind you just briefly that we're all in this together, and that's really what this school is about. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Doral Beasley. So if I start off with a question, does my time start?
I'll try to toll your time.
Okay.
Give you some rope.
So I have a question on the 140,000 square feet. When you first had developed a size for the school, it was about 155,000 square feet. And we wanted to have a school that hopefully would have an auditorium that would be larger, with at least as large as the student body of the high school. But the new ride regulations don't allow that. So it's about 2,500 square feet differential between what we were hoping for and what we're probably going to end up with. So is the 140,000 square feet with an auditorium the size of what they're telling us that we're going to have, or what we want?
The 140,000 square foot size has approximately about a 500 seat auditorium, which is about the 2/3 component that they would permit. So, one thing I want to make sure we understand is that the development of this high school building is going to require much more discussion and deliberation. A year's worth of planning will go into this to make sure that we are building the most appropriate building from a programmatic standpoint, one that meets your finances, one that also meets your other, important objectives of the community. So, we're throwing around these numbers. They are not absolute, right? If the economic climate changes and we can give you more square footage, then we will do so. What I wanted to make sure you knew is that through our due diligence, programmatically, it was around 155. We feel confident that we can get it to about 140, making some adjustments that would not negatively impact the program. You could easily imagine, though, if you were to ask us to go even smaller, then you do run the risk of negatively impacting the program. So I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that there's still time and proper time to adjust it.
Okay, but we will be locking in a number, a bonding number before the end of this year, so that those changes will have to come afterwards. So if it does require more money, it'll have to come out of what we were going to do with the elementary schools. Okay. We wouldn't be here tonight, ladies and gentlemen, if it wasn't for 2 decades of Democratic control of town councils not doing their fiduciary responsibility to keep the school budget under control. It's absolutely out of control. East Greenwich this year has more students in their schools than we do. 6, same number of working schools. Their total school budget is $145 million, and ours is $169 million. After you factor out transportation costs and our grant money, we're still a good $20 million ahead of them. The money to build this new high school and to fix our schools has to come out of a school budget that's a responsible number. There's more than enough money in our school budget to pay for what we want to build here and not tax a penny to the people of this town. We've been paying the freight here for 20 years. We have the highest paid teachers in the state of Rhode Island this year, $98,000. As a matter of fact, on an hourly basis, they make more than our superintendent. Our enrollment the past 5 years has gone down 20%, but every year when you level fund them, what do you think is going to happen? Our per pupil cost goes up year after year after year. Mr. Dunham, whoever, the gentleman from the state who you talked to about financial things, of whether or not we can do it on a per pupil basis, I don't see how he could possibly have come up with that decision, that we can't develop our budget on a per pupil basis. I'm finishing up. I also think it's a travesty that we would bulldoze 235,000 square feet of the existing high school complex when this town is dying for affordable housing. At the last meeting, I told you we only added about 45 units over the last decade. We're almost 500 units short. That complex by its own could add 100 to 150 affordable housing units to this community in Wakefield. So the people that live there, they don't have to walk a mile and three-quarters mile to get to a bus stop like they do off of
Dorald.
Curtis Corner.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Everybody just come on up.
Hi, Carol Vetter. I just want to bring it back to the bond. I really think we have an opportunity here. We keep talking about a flagship that our high school should be. I don't think anybody drives by it today thinks that's a flagship building. So we know we can do better. Our students deserve better. We have so many proud graduates of that school that live in this town that I think would be very proud to have a new, great building for the kids that come after them. Plus that, it's an opportunity, one opportunity that we get. We have so many kids leaving our school district for Narragansett, for North Kingstown, for Charlestown. We have one opportunity to bring them back to this district, and that's with a new high school. It's the only thing that's going to bring them back. We have great teachers. We have great programs. We don't have a great facility. We can't even have some of our football games in our district because we don't have a field that is capable that other districts will agree to play on. I mean, we have got to do better. The other thing is we can save money if we bring these kids back. We pay $6 million in out-of-district tuition. The only way we can save some of that money is to keep our students here. This is our opportunity. And if we don't do it now, we're going to lose that 52% reimbursement rate. So this is the opportunity we have. Keep our students here, have that flagship building we can be proud of, and save the money because we'll have the highest reimbursement rate we can get. So I'm here to actually implore you to do what we need to do for our students because they deserve this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Maura Gazzaro. I'm from Matunic. I had a question, and I think you just touched on this, Carol. As far as this is the opportunity, right? I mean, the bond, the statewide bond, school bond was a number of years ago, statewide. So we're at the 11th hour here. This is am I correct in saying that? Because people ask me that, or we talk about that in the community, and I just wanted to get. Is this our final opportunity to actually take advantage of this bond money?
So under current legislation, it is our last opportunity. We have to have quote-unquote shovels in the ground by December of this year in order to qualify for the additional bonuses. Now, we would be still eligible for our 35% base rate, right? That continues on. But you're correct. In 2018, when every community, for the most part, voted for that $250 million bond, that money runs out. And so that would not be retained. And that is something that, whether you voted for that or not, all communities are paying into at the current moment because they're paying the state's paying on that bond. So if we don't recoup that money here, it goes to other districts.
Right. So this is really our last opportunity to maximize on the reimbursement and the bonuses we could get with this project and with this vote, right?
Correct.
Okay. So I was at last week's meeting and I spoke. I'm a mother of 3 kids in the young school-age kids in the district, and middle-class working mom. My husband and I were taking the hit too. We were lucky enough to move down here a few years ago. We are both born and bred Rhode Islanders, but got down to South Kingstown because it's a beautiful community, and I really appreciate the comments. And there is a very unique culture down here, and the high school kids that I know today, they love being SK kids. They love being in the high school. And I think that we need to now, it is our responsibility to bring it forward. That facility is too old, and it is not conducive to the learning that our children need to do with all the education models that are out there today. It was built for the models many, many years ago. It is a new era, and I just want to again reiterate my support for this bond. The community will have their chance to vote on this. Tonight, you're voting whether or not to put it on the referendum. I think put it out there, and I think over the next several months, just really, I think the last referendum, there was a lot of confusion as to what people were voting on. I think that's been clear. We were also in the midst of a pandemic, and I can tell you, as a working mom with 3 school-age kids, I wasn't paying attention because I was trying to tread water, and I think that was the case with a lot of people in the community. I think we're out of that. We're in a new era, and yes, we have financial struggles. The economy, certainly, there's all kinds of pressures that are driving the increased costs with construction, et cetera. But this is an authorization, not a must spend, which was spoken about tonight. And I think that just all of that information needs to be succinct and out there and pushed into the community and at all of the ball fields and the playgrounds and the markets and everywhere, if you folks do choose to put this in the referendum, because this is so important to the families of this, with children in this community who are sending their kids out of district or paying the expensive private school. They will come back, and I'm very confident in that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, anyone else in the audience wish to speak? Everybody just come on up. All right, I'll ask again, anyone? Okay. All right, we're going to turn to up here. We're going to discuss it up here. So we've had some interesting presentations provided by staff and outside advisors. We've had some interesting concerns brought to us from residents. Now it's up for us to talk it out.
So I'd love to start. First, I want to thank everybody who's here tonight, everybody who has been following along, Studio Jade, the school building committee, the school committee. A lot of hard work has gone into this. What I hear most is talk about how we need a new high school. We desperately need a new high school. I think that as a result of all these conversations, we realize that the cost to renovate is comparable to the cost of building new. I think that's important to note. I think $125 million will get us a new high school, which is what everybody's saying we desperately need, and I agree. If we push this to 150, the vast majority of voters have not been following along with these meetings. They haven't followed the way that everyone here in this room has. So what they're going to see when they go to vote is a price tag that's nearly double the price tag of a project that didn't pass last time. My fear is that if we push this to 150, it will fail and we will lose all of it. We cannot risk that. I think we don't have a clear path forward as far as our elementary schools go. So until we do, let's focus on the high school. Let's get these kids what they need, what they deserve. I think 125 is the way to go.
May I go? Go ahead. So there's 5 of us here on the council, and we were elected by everyone here. And first and foremost, I believe that we're here to listen to the community and their concerns and then make the big decisions, the responsible decisions. We know that many people are going about their daily lives. They're not paying attention. They're taking care of their elderly mother or their children or everything in between, trying to figure out their jobs. We know that. So we're tasked with a great responsibility to make those decisions, to use their money wisely and responsibly. We We met on Monday, and we were cognizant of the needs of the most vulnerable in this community when we addressed the elderly tax abatement program that we have. We've expanded it again. What we're talking about is not monopoly money. It's not running a credit card and getting free money. It's real money, and every dollar counts. We hear from people in the community who ask us to consider their late tax payment and forgive it. People ask about reductions in the beach pass. All of these things come up the whole time we serve. So we need to be responsible and cognizant of the most vulnerable. We need to look at the data and the demographics of the town when we make decisions, looking at household income, looking at assessed values of properties. We need to pay attention to what people are asking of us. I know from everyone here, I wrote in my notes, we are hearing over and over, we need a new high school. We do. Even at a price tag of $125 million, it's a historic amount that we need to borrow. South Kingstown's never, ever borrowed that much. So when I make the decision on behalf of all of you, I'm thinking about needing to get it right by the community, making good decisions that will serve us now and in the future. Building a new high school is exactly what we need. We know, as Jess Rose has just said, we know the high school can't be renovated properly in any way. It doesn't make sense schematically. And I would be very excited to support a new high school and can get behind it. I think for a long time we've been quite divided as a community. We've had a variety of plans and players and people, and we need to put that aside and get behind a new high school. I can support a bond of $125 million. I think that's what we need. I think the other things can come into focus as we have additional information. So that's where I stand.
Thank you, Deb.
The bottom line on this is, I agree with my colleagues. I've been on this since October of last year, Phil, that we started as part of the school committee. I understand where the four options come from. I also understand that in passing up on that last $25 million, we're waiving $13 million in aid. But I think there are a couple of important reasons to just focus on the high school right now. The first is, I think Deb makes a great point about showing the community that we have a consensus and that we're not divided here. While I would prefer to be able to work on all of the schools, as was outlined in the option 1 project, it may be possible as the years go on, as we find savings operationally, sale of assets. We still haven't resolved what we're doing with South Road School, and Wakefield School may be a possibility because the school committee took the difficult decision to close down 2 schools to reflect the changes in the demographics and the changes in the enrollment. We're asking the voters to approve a new high school. And I was also going to talk about values, but frankly, the folks in the audience did a better job than I could about it. I think that's the bottom line. I think we have to go with the $125 million. We do need a new high school. Anyone who's been through it knows it. It is expensive. It is too large. We're heating it. We're putting electricity through it, and we're not using 40% of the capacity of it right now. This is the solution. We're not just making a decision for the community. We're the gatekeepers. It's the community that is going to have to decide this, and it is going to come into how people feel about taxes. The cost is significant. There is a sacrifice involved here. But I think it's a decision that we've reached a point we have to make. It's not like next year there's going to be more state aid. We're told that there's going to be less. It's not like next year it's going to be cheaper to build a high school. The high school we have is now 69 years old. We had a representative of the Department of Education come down and tell us that the usable life of the building is 50 years. We're already past it. We have to do something. I'm in favor of the $125 million.
Thank you, Mike.
I agree with my colleagues as well. As much as, like Mike, I would like to get that 13 or 12.5 million of free money for the rest of the schools. I think that our priority is the high school, and also in being united as a council and respectful to all of the issues that have been brought before us, both here, online, emails. I think 125 is also, I agree that that's the right amount, and I think we just will continue to work going forward to take, special care of our most vulnerable residents in the way that we did on Monday, and just do the best we can going forward.
Thank you, Patty. All right, they're making my decision pretty easy up here. But I'll say a few words here. I do believe that $150 million is probably the best bang for your buck in the long term. But, obviously that has impacts, and we've compared the tax implications as it relates to each project. And there's no doubt about it, the gravamen of this whole school facilities redo here is a new high school. I knew coming into this meeting that at a minimum, we had to find a way to, approve a new high school, move forward with at least that being on a referendum for the voters to decide. But I'm happy to hear that we've all come to terms on a certain number for that and what to prioritize, because I believe it's also important that we need to be unanimous. We need to signal to the community that the council's behind this, the town's leaders are behind this, that ultimately help hopefully put this over the top. But again, there's no doubt the high school we need a new high school. It needs to be improved. I graduated there in 2011. It was not in great shape then, and it hasn't changed at all since. So I'm happy to see us all come to an agreement on this. I think this is, addresses the immediate needs, and due to the uncertainty with the elementaries, which Jess Rose has stated, we're going to have to address that later on. But all aboard for 125 for the new high school. It's needed now, and I implore the voters to get out there, talk to your friends, talk to others in town, and let's make this happen. But with that said, we do need a motion.
I'll make a motion to, how do we word this? I've never done this before. Make a motion to
Authorize.
authorize the,
Suggestion, or
Go ahead, Luke.
to authorize the bond council to draft legislation to move forward to the House. You would actually have to have a second action to be able to move that forward, so you have approval of the actual verbiage on that. So that would be enabling us to basically initiating us to draft language to move to a bond referendum.
so I move to authorize the school building committee to,
Or administration.
or administration, to move forward with, help me out on this again?
Draft bond language.
Draft bond language.
for school
Amy, you want to do
facility
a better job at that?
Yep. Direct administration to work with bond council on drafting enabling legislation. That would be step number 1.
So moved.
bond. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? None. That passes unanimously. That's going to bring us to the end here. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? No? All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This meeting is now adjourned.
Good job, everybody.